In San Jose, California, where the bustle of Silicon Valley fades into peaceful suburban streets, lived 9-year-old Jeannette Tamayo. A bright, cheerful child, Jeannette's life was filled with the simple joys of childhood: school days, friends, and a loving family. June 6, 2003, started like any other day for Jeannette, a fourth grader at Blossom Valley School. But as she walked home from school, her world was about to change in a way no one could have predicted. What awaited her at home was not the familiar comfort of family, but the presence of a stranger, a man whose actions would turn an ordinary afternoon into a harrowing ordeal of survival. This is not just a story of a crime. It's a testament to the strength of a young girl in the grip of terror. It's a story that challenges us to think about what we would do in the face of hair-raising fear. The sun shone brightly over the streets of San Jose, casting a warm glow on the laughter and chatter of children leaving school. Among them was 9-year-old Jeannette Tamayo, her backpack slung over her shoulder, making her way home, unaware of the shadow about to fall over her. As Jeannette reached her home, an unexpected and chilling scene unfolded. Waiting inside was David Montiel Cruz, a man she had never met, whose presence would turn a safe haven into a scene of horror. Jeannette noticed that the front door was slightly open, but she decided her mother had returned home. She saw that in her bedroom the window was broken, and the phone cable was cut off. It was then that she realized that something was wrong, but it was already too late. She heard a stranger knocking on the door. She opened it and immediately felt a bad vibe coming from him. He asked questions, trying to find out if there was someone else in the house. When Jeannette tried to close the door, the man slid it open. He sexually assaulted her in her brother's room. In the next half hour, Jeannette's world was upended. Cruz stayed with Jeannette, casting a silent but palpable threat. His next moves were calculated and cold. The arrival of Jeannette's mother and 15-year-old brother only escalated the terror. In an act of violence, Cruz attacked them and brutally beat both of them. He hit the mother repeatedly in the face and upper body. Jeannette's 15-year-old brother Pablo fought to protect his little sister, but was also savagely beaten. Pablo took a pan from the kitchen to attack the stranger, but the man grabbed it and hit Rosalia, Jeannette's mother, on the head. The nightmare escalated as Cruz, in a desperate bid to escape, dragged Jeannette to the garage. Tied up and terrified, she was forced into the back seat of a car, trapped in a box, as her family fought valiantly, but in vain. Jeannette saw blood on their faces and asked the man if he had killed them. He didn't reply, only laughed. The little girl thought that her mother and brother were gone. She felt relieved when she saw her mother running after the car and her brother calling for help. As the car pulled away with Jeannette inside, the quiet street bore witness to a family shattered and a little girl's life thrown into chaos. What followed was a test of courage and wit beyond her years. In the midst of abduction, a question loomed large. What was going to happen to the girl? According to experts, if a kidnapper has murderous intentions, the crime will be committed in the initial hours after the kidnapping. The accounts of long-term abduction survivors are almost unheard of. Taking into consideration the abductor's violent behavior, there was very little hope. San Jose police descended on the quiet Southwind Drive neighborhood minutes after receiving a frantic 911 call from a neighbor at 4:37 p.m. They were combing the city on horseback and with bloodhounds all day, and the FBI became fully involved in the investigation. The information was scarce. The girl's mother was stunned and bruised after the attack and couldn't tell them much. She and her son were treated at a local hospital. The girl's mother, Rosalia, had to be tied to the stretcher and forced to go to hospital against her will. Jeannette's cousin said to reporters, "Rosalia hasn't been eating. She's missing her little girl." Luckily, a neighbor gave a piece of vital evidence, her security camera video, that showed the suspect's silver or tan four-door sedan speeding away. However, due to the vague car description and lack of a license plate number, the California Highway Patrol stated that it was unable to issue a statewide alert. Nevertheless, all the officers were on the lookout for the suspect's vehicle, and focused mainly on the missing girl. When Jeannette was last seen, she was wearing a green shirt and black pants, long black hair with blonde highlights in the front. Her height, 4 feet 11 inches. The only description of the kidnapper the police had was this: Latino man in his early 20s, wearing a light-colored t-shirt and a beanie cap, clean-shaven with a light mustache. He had a big scratch on his face as Jeannette's mother had fought back, clawed him and bit his fingers. He was possibly driving a Mazda sedan. The family moved into the house a few months ago. Word of the brazen abduction spread fast through the quiet neighborhood. The community was left shaken by the incident. Children and their parents were scared. The police said that the kidnapper was clearly targeting that house and that family. The surveillance tape showed that when Jeannette walked up to her house, the abductor's car was parked outside the Tamayo home. Shortly after arriving, he got out of his car and entered the house. He waited nearly 30 minutes for the girl to get home before spending additional 30 minutes inside the house. Jeannette's elder brother said the first number on the blue and white California license plate of the kidnapper's car was a 5. He described the vehicle as a 4-door, mid-sized sedan with chromed wheels and tinted back windows. The suspect was caught on the neighbor's security camera several times during the abduction. However, the images were too fuzzy. The investigators were looking at all the people who had recently been to the house and at the previous tenants of the house who might have been the kidnapper's real target. If the abductor lay in wait for his victim, how could he know that was her home? How did he know when she was supposed to return home? How did he know that at that moment, nobody else would be present? The police supposed he had received information from somebody who knew the family. San Jose police assigned over 150 officers to the case. They had a helicopter in the air. The city was flooded with pictures of Jeannette. The investigators were doing everything possible, but they were still unable to discover the girl's location. In the grim reality of captivity, young Jeannette Tamayo found herself in a situation that would test the limits of her spirit and mind. Held in a bedroom on the second floor of a white 2-story house, handcuffed and far from home, she faced challenges that no child should ever encounter. In the next room, there was a TV. On the next morning of abduction, Cruz was watching the news. Jeannette could hear her cousin addressing her on TV. She said that they were looking for her and told her to be strong and not to give up. That gave Jeannette hope. She decided to fight to get out of there or die trying. Jeannette's fear turned into courage. She said to herself that she's a fighter and she's gonna make it. For 2 days, Jeannette endured unimaginable fear and suffering at the hands of David Montiel Cruz. She was subject to sexual assault, and the man also threatened to kill her. He even attempted to smother her with a pillow. The young girl was terrified, but even in the darkest moments, her determination to survive never wavered. Her mind, resilient and sharp, began to craft a plan. Jeannette knew that direct confrontation or physical force would not lead to her freedom. Instead, she chose a path of psychological strategy to gain the trust of her captor. She started asking him casual questions and smiled back when Cruz smiled at her. Santa Clara County Deputy District Attorney Matt Breaker, who prosecuted the case, said that killers often dehumanize their victims. In interviews, predators themselves often say they regard their victims merely as objects. No matter how scared she was, rather than screaming and crying, Jeannette engaged Cruz in conversation, sharing stories of her family, her dreams, and her life, reminding him subtly that she was not just a victim, an object, but a human being with a life full of potential. This approach is considered to be highly tactical, and it is thought to have saved lives in many abduction and hostage cases. As the hours passed, Jeannette's strategy began to show results. Cruz's demeanor shifted as the girl gained his trust. He uncuffed her and allowed her more freedom within her confines. Jeannette's kindness and humanity were slowly breaking through the barriers of his conscience. She kept interacting to the point where she became a real person to him, Matt Breaker said. According to the FBI, talking is the most effective way to diffuse a violent situation. He is less likely to attack the more he talks. Connecting with him as a person might spoil a predator's fantasy. And if you treat a criminal with respect he craves and sort of befriend him instead of arguing, it might be more difficult for him to depersonalize and attack you. Ted Bundy and other serial killers also confessed that it was more difficult to kill if a person started talking, to the point that they gave up their intention and chose a different victim. However, each case is individual. See whether or not it's working. If it's not working, the victim needs to rethink their strategy. There are things you should never do with a criminal. Threatening the criminal with jail may force him to kill his witness. Begging or showing fear arouses and entices him to abuse his power. A natural question, what if I was your mother, sister, or child, can trigger his deep-rooted hatred of them and women in general. It was during a moment of relative calm while watching TV that Jeannette seized an opportunity. She convinced Cruz that she suffered from a life-threatening condition, requiring medication for asthma and a fictitious disease, creating a scenario where her survival depended on his action. In a twist of fate, this ruse became Jeannette's path to freedom. As dawn breaks on the third day of Jeannette Tamayo's harrowing captivity, a glimmer of hope arises. Through a blend of empathy and cleverness, she had begun to turn her desperate situation into a possibility for escape. Whether out of belief or a change of heart, Cruz made the decision that would lead to her freedom. Perhaps, grappling with the gravity of his actions, he dropped Jeannette off on a street corner, a decision that marked the end of her physical captivity, but the beginning of a journey to bring her abductor to justice. Had she been merely a shrieking object, it's easy to imagine that her abductor might have killed her or kept her hostage for years. Before letting Jeannette go, Cruz threatened to come back and kill her and her family if she told anyone who he was and what he did. With remarkable presence of mind, Jeannette ran into a nearby convenience store in East Palo Alto, about 30 miles from her home. Her immediate instinct was to seek help, to reach the safety she had been so brutally torn from. The owner of the store said that Jeannette was crying when she entered the market around 10:30 p.m. Later, Jeannette said that she was crying because she was so happy to be free again. The owner asked her if she was okay, and the girl said no. He then recognized the missing girl from TV. The police were called, marking the first step in her path to reclaiming her life. When Jeannette's neighbors heard the news, they gathered on the street and hugged. The child's mother said her daughter was born for the second time on that day for her. In her interview with the police, Jeannette demonstrated an astonishing level of detail and awareness. She recounted the directions Cruz had taken after the kidnapping, a crucial piece of information in tracing his whereabouts. She was able to recall every turn Cruz took in his car, leading police straight to his house. She also had evidence in her pockets, some things from her kidnapper's house, including his watch. She picked those things because the detectives on her favorite shows, CSI and Law and Order, always looked for clues. But Jeannette's astuteness didn't stop there. In an extraordinary display of acumen, she had memorized Cruz's cell phone number when he ordered pizza during her captivity. This piece of information was the final key needed to locate Cruz. Armed with Jeannette's detailed account, the police swiftly moved to arrest Cruz. It was Jeannette in the back of police car who showed them his house, and she had also drawn a layout of the house for the police. Cruz was apprehended as he prepared to flee, his plans thwarted by the bravery and intelligence of a young girl whose spirit he could not break. He was hiding in the attic, but thanks to the layout, the police were able to find him. He did fight with the officers during the arrest. After being bitten by a police dog, he repeatedly kicked and attacked the officers. Jeannette's mother said after the abduction, "What it feels like to lose a child, I think you feel like you're going to die." Deputy Chief Rob Davis, the lead investigator on the case, said, "She is an extremely bright and articulate young woman, and she's also brave." In January 2005, Cruz, then 26, faced the consequences of his actions. He was convicted and sentenced to over a century in prison, a sentence that spoke not only to the severity of his crimes, but also to the strength of the case built on Jeannette's testimony. Thanks to Jeannette and her bravery, he never hurt any other child again. What drove Cruz to commit this act of violence? Understanding the mind behind the crime is a journey into a complex labyrinth of motives and past experiences, seeking answers in the shadows of the human psyche. Experts in criminal psychology often point to a range of factors that could lead to such criminal behavior. From troubled childhoods to a desperate need for control, the motives are as varied as they are complex. In similar cases, perpetrators often exhibit a pattern of escalating behavior, a journey from small transgressions to major crimes. It's a descent into a world where the value of human life and dignity becomes lost in a twisted narrative of power and control. Understanding the why is more than an academic pursuit. It's a key to preventing future tragedies, a way to recognize warning signs before they erupt into violence. The story didn't end for Jeannette then. Ahead of her lay 6 years of therapy and a constant struggle with paralyzing fear of the outside world, particularly men. This fear was so overwhelming that it often prevented her from leaving her house. When she turned 15, Jeannette finally resolved to face her fear. She was determined not to let trauma take over her life. She decided to meet Heather Randall, the detective who had worked on her case and, with Jeanette's help, had put Cruz behind bars. Today, Jeannette has resolved to harness her innate courage and keen intellect to become a detective. Her goal is to use everything in her power to help and protect her community. She is currently studying law enforcement at the San Diego Police Academy. Jeannette's ordeal shows us that in the face of danger, quick thinking and a strong presence of mind can make a significant difference. Her ability to strategize, to empathize, and to ultimately turn the tables on her captor serves as a powerful reminder of the strength that lies within each of us, often untapped until tested by adversity. In the darkest corners of true crime, there are often glimmers of hope and resilience that can teach us invaluable lessons about the human spirit. Jeannette says that every person has a story, that no matter what life throws at us, we're all fighters, and every one of us has the ability to keep going. If this story has touched you, please share it and continue the conversation about safety, awareness, and resilience. Thank you for joining me on True Crime Case Files. To my viewers, your thirst for understanding these complex narratives keeps me driven. Please, share your thoughts in the comments. For more deep dives into the challenging mysteries and captivating true crime stories, subscribe to my channel. In the next episode, I'll uncover another chilling case that awaits its turn in the spotlight. Not to miss it, hit the bell for notifications and be part of the journey through the unexplored paths of true crime. See you next time.